Hola, halito, hello. I'm Gershon Mosley, and I wanted to talk a little bit about purpose. My purpose right now has been to reconnect with my family because I've been so far removed since the late 80s. I've been bouncing around. I didn't really spend a whole lot of time with my family once I got into skateboarding because my focus was primarily on that, and I was running. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out who I was, and I was thinking that who I was disconnected from my family. But family is actually a lot to do with who you are and what you come to be in life. And because I realized this is why I've actually come back to my family. Some people wondered why. Why are you with your mother? It's like, well, had I thought about this sooner, I would have come back, before my great grandmother died, because she was the one that had the most influence on me being who I am to this day. Like my thought process and a lot of different things that people may find odd about me. It's because I spent a lot of time with my great grandmother. She was quite a bit older than I am, or I was at the time. But we were of the same sign. We're both Capricorns. And she passed in 2009. And I was around, but I didn't really deal with that so well. And that actually led me to run away again. People don't really consider what makes certain people good at whatever they're known for. I was known for skateboarding. I'm known for skateboarding. I can do a lot of other things. I developed a lot of other skills throughout my life, and even before I actually got into skateboarding, I was into drawing. I didn't do color very much. I was more into pencil drawing. But, coming back to my family was very important because there's a lot of things trials and tribulations I went through. I wouldn't say they were unnecessary, but I would say that they would have been handled different had I been around my family a bit longer, or not even a bit longer, had I just frequented my family, my mother. But my mother, I was in San Jose because of my mother, and that was, we were taken away from Compton when we were younger. Like when I was, 6? I moved to San Jose, but actually I was back and forth, so I wasn't here until I don't know. That's more something I have to talk to my mother about. But I spent less time here than I actually believed that I did, because when you're young, the time seems a lot longer than it actually is, and as we get older, it just seems like time just flies by. But sometimes that's not true either. Sometimes time just slowly moves. My mother was she was good enough to marry a man that was a great influence. He had a work ethic, and he did a lot for us when we were in San Jose, but we weren't around family. And everybody, I wouldn't say everybody, but a lot of families they have their trials and tribulations, and mine was no different. And because of that, I focused on skateboarding. So me skateboarding wasn't me showing my personality so much, unless you can actually see it through through the riding, which perceptive people can, and they would have known or could have known there was more to me than that. A lot of people would just take it for the entertainment value and don't go any further than that. And I see that, and I realize that when I interact with certain people, because once I start to talk about the things that actually can concern me or actually intrigue me, a lot of the people shut down. And everybody's on different schedules. Everybody's in a different place in their mind. So I don't get offended by that. But some people may find me offensive, I guess, at times. I go on and I go on about certain things that they'll take as I'm really serious. And, more or less it's a discussion, because I don't want to just talk about like something that is just a basic conversation, which skateboarding can get really in depth, but most people don't really get that in depth with skateboarding. They want to talk about names and places. I'll talk about the tricks or like if I use the names or as examples. And I talked about that in one of the other conversations I had that I videotaped. And it doesn't mean that I'm upset with any of these people, or I hate, I don't hate anybody. I've never actually truly hated anyone, and the people that I don't want to interact with, I don't interact with. And a lot of those people I never mention, or I never will mention, because their names are irrelevant. The example could be just like a generalization that actually, a lot of times these generalizations, it's truly that, because it's not just one individual. I can lump, say, 5 different people for a conversation. And that's not to say that I really am truly bothered by what I'm talking about. I'm just learning. And I would hope that the interaction with other people, that they could learn from it too, instead of just taking it as like, oh, this guy's talking shit. Well, like just talking shit, I would just really just be like, fuck this guy. And there would be no more to it, and that would be that. But it's never so simple for me when it comes down to talking about a subject or, anything of that matter when it comes down to people, because our social interactions are very important. This actually is the key to life for everyone. How we get along or how we don't get along. But for me, the ones that I don't get along with, I do not generally interact with, and I don't use them as the examples other than the examples of why I don't interact with certain people, which that causes problems, because some people, all they know is that, when you don't interact with them, you must hate them. But hate's a word that's, I don't really spend a whole lot of time in that to that depth, because if it's not worth learning from, then it's not worth anything. So that's where that ends up, and it's not something that I spend a lot of time with, but I can be judged to be a hater, and usually the people that are judging me to be a hater are haters themselves. But how can you hate something that you don't truly know? So, and then also there's this other concept that people don't consider, is like, to actually hate, you have to know what love is. And some people, their perception of love is not even what it truly is. Most of the time it's like a one-way street. So if you're expecting that people should be paying attention to you, and because they're paying attention to you with favor, that's love. Well, love can also be to leave you alone. And I don't think some people really get that, because they will interact with people they don't like and spend so much time talking about what they don't like about these people, and not realizing that that's just a waste of time, and they're not getting anywhere, they're not really building anything. And if you're trying to get people around you that you want to have that same discussion over and over and over, you'll find that you'll have a group of friends or acquaintances, more or less, that you don't build anything with. You're not going anywhere. It's like running on a treadmill, but no exercise is actually no exercise is gotten from that either. So my perspective is, I'd rather be alone than be amongst a bunch of people that aren't really trying to build. So I've spent a lot of time alone. I do a lot of things on my own, and that's not how I would prefer it. It's just how it has to be if I want to move. And I've spent most of my life trying to grow up, and I'm still trying to grow up. No one's 100%, and no one will be 100%. You can be talked about or judged when you're finished, and that's the end of the story. But the story goes so deep that it can't even really truly be told. So, the word legend, that's really somebody else discussing somebody's story, which they don't have all the details. And it's kind of a strange concept, and usually it's based on idolization. And I don't idolize anyone, and I don't really want anybody to idolize me. I'd rather, if you have respect for me, let's see if we can build something. Let's see if we can do something. You know, I try to reach out to people that skateboard because I still skateboard, and it's not just to go skateboarding. I can film, I can do all these other aspects of it, you know, and I'm inspired by people being inspired. So if people looking up to me, like being stoked to be around me, to skate with me, that helps them step up, then that will help me step up as well. And I don't really think that a lot of people consider these things when they're really addressing the idea of like the professional realm of skateboarding or anything sports. I don't see skateboarding as a sport, so I consider that a different topic. I see it as an art form myself, so competition isn't really that, it has never been that important to me. And if I compete against myself. And I would hope that other people see it the same way, but it's not the way that most people are raised. Most people are very into sports, basketball, football, baseball, whatever. And, you know, that win or lose concept, I don't get that, because like with art, say if I'm drawing something, I start with a scribble and then I end up with something perhaps. Or it may look like a scribble after I'm finished, but I don't consider that winning or losing, because even with something I'm not 100% stoked on, that may have an element inside of it that inspires me to build something else, and that brings me back to being around family. You know, being able to have conversations with my mother about things that I never considered, you know, like mainly with the family. These things actually like bring me back to all the things that I've learned since being away, and how I can actually fit in the world. Like, we fit because we're different. To be the same, if everybody was exactly the same, then how special is that? Like when I've watched videos where pretty much like they'll call it a team, and they did find the I, it's in between, it's in the A, it's the A-hole. So, but if you have a team full of the same idea of skateboarding, say like it's just a team of street skaters, but everybody skates the same obstacles, there's no one with a different idea. Like, you know, if you want everybody wearing the same type of clothes, everybody wanting to skate the same obstacle, you know, it could be cool because you can all skate together always. But at the same time, if you watch the video, you watch part after part, you can see that there's different levels, obviously, but a lot of times you'll see like a repetitive thing. Because if the more that you skate together, or the more that you do anything together, the more that you take these influences, and so that means that you'll have a video full of like something that you could be like, oh, that team, everybody did. Well, like say if you skate in handrails, everybody's gonna 50-50 a handrail at some point. But if you have that element all the way through the video, it'd be crazy. Like, you know, vert skaters, like back in the days, there was more vert skaters. So, you know, everybody had their unique style, and there was less back in the days, but there's pretty much, you know, to the setup airs, you know, the backside air, and then they go for, you know, a McTwist, or they do whatever they're gonna do. But, you know, for most of the other riders would have like a consistent thing about them. And what I always thought about a great team, and I've seen it happen, but I don't see it happen as often, you know, as I thought I would eventually. Because I thought as skateboarding progressed, I would see more diversity in the teams, but I don't see a whole lot of vert skaters on teams now, and that, you know, I know that a lot of people aren't very into it, but that just goes to show that it's more based on the notes, the federal notes, the money. Because if the new generation coming up that are the ones that are buying the product or whatever, if they think that they only want to see one type of skateboarding, then that leaves a whole genre of skateboarding out. And, you know, it was the same as when I was coming up. It was more vert skaters. But then when we came in, we kind of wiped them out. And it was dope for us, but then it got boring at a point because, you know, I started realizing, oh, there's only street contests. And when I would go to Munster or go to Dortmund or something like that, I would enjoy sitting and watching the vert contest because it was different. It was like Bob Burnquist or Mike Frazier, you know, Danny Way, Colin McKay. Those guys just, they would come with different ways of skating. Tony Hawk, of course. You know, it was great to see them stepping it up. You know, because they were taking from the street. Because they were trying to get us to be more interested. They started doing the flip trick grabs and all that stuff, and that was really dope for me. So that also got me to progress on mini ramp. You know, I didn't start out as a transition skater. Started like on a street, like basic street, no parks. I didn't get into transition until like right before I got sponsored for the most part, and well, probably like a year or two. And this was luckily because of a friend that lived close to me. His name was Yaki, and he had a I think it was like 9 feet, maybe an 8-foot vert ramp, and then it seemed like within a couple of weeks he chopped it down to a mini ramp, and it was in front of his house, and it was only a couple blocks away from my house. So that's how I started to learn how to skate transition. And every day I would have somebody to skate with, but these guys also would go skate street too. So I got more well-rounded, but I still was weak, very, very weak at transition until I got sponsored. And I got sponsored by a team that was predominantly transition skaters, Santa Cruz. And that wasn't the team that I got on, but I remember going on tour and getting really heckled by, say, Andy Roy or Jason Jesse because I was a street skater, you know. But I did skate some transition, but I didn't really get at the vert. You know, I wouldn't get in the big bowls, you know, because by that time I'd already broken my wrist, and I broke my wrist in a pool, and this was pretty early on. So anything that was over 6 feet tall, I was pretty much avoiding it. And even to the day, like, I don't do a whole lot of big ramp, but I can. But a lot of that has to do more with me not wanting to wear pads, because every time I try to wear pads, I got elbow pads on, I go to my shoulder, I got knee pads on, I go to my hips. So I spent a lot of time being injured that way, and I'd rather just roll out, because I started skating street, and whenever I'd fall, you know, I'd learn. I was into karate movies when I was younger, so rolling and these tumbles and flips and stuff like that I wouldn't say it came naturally, but it was something that was easy to incorporate because I was already into it. So, you know, this skateboarding is still a big influence in my life, and I'm really looking now to obviously I don't have to, but I am an adult, and there's more to life than just skateboarding, and it's not always on my mind. I have so many different ways I want to express myself, but there's also the concept of monetary. So with skateboarding, I know there's a lot of things that I could actually provide, that I could build with, but it's who do I build with? And this is key, because I've tried to work with certain people, and my idea with the company, the Obtuse Concept, was never to actually I didn't really ever see it as a skateboard company. And then also, I didn't feel that I had the right to try to not force, but like try to get people to go hot, to do the hardest tricks or any of that stuff. And then when I would ask certain people to step it up, because up until recently, there was a particular rider that, you know, he skated really good, and he has a lot of promise. And the thing that I was looking at is like, well, every time, you know, getting footage from him was a big issue. And, you know, you can't, if you're just flowing somebody product, you know, and I had the conversation, is like, look, it's a give and take. You know, I have to sell this stuff, you know, so giving it to you, you're basically a billboard. So like, we need to get this off so that I could pay for what I'm giving you. And, you know, part of that whole situation would be getting the footage. But, you know, you can't really you can't expect anybody to do what they don't necessarily want to do. You know, that he did what he did for himself. But I want to show skateboarding outside of skate parks. If I'm gonna use the skate park, I have a series I call the Park Ranger series. And, you know, I'd like to focus on a full edit, or, you know, not doing more than just a trick, and, you know, and I didn't want the whole thing focused on, you know, getting, every time I have footage of a rider, it always being at a skate park. You know, little skate parks are great, but they're made for it. And there's a whole lot of different elements, and it is not even to say that you have to find the biggest rail, or, you know, banks, or anything specific, because the more creative you could be, the better. And I don't know, it's interesting. There's a lot of people that are creative, but I see now more so than ever, because back in the days we had VHS. You know, we'd only, if you didn't have a VCR and you couldn't afford the new videos, you weren't watching videos all the time. But now you have it on your phone, so a lot of people spend more time watching skateboarding than they actually do, you know, performing it, or, you know, enacting it. It's a better word perhaps. But so a lot more influences. Really, a lot more influence is what's being presented. So having individuals, everyone's an individual, but a lot of people end up following trends, and instead of creating the trends, because, well, like, some people finding the spots that they want to skate and how they skate it, that in itself is something that's very valuable, because it seems few and far between nowadays. A lot of times, what people are watching also is the people that are sponsored, and they're being taken to some of the better spots. So everybody's looking to perform, to either do those tricks, and to do those specific tricks, you have to go to a spot like it. So it really kind of pigeonholes skateboarding, I think. And I see that there's a lot more that can be done, and I don't want to tell anybody what to do or how to do it, but I could help, you know, help get people to think a little bit on a different level. But that's only for the people with an open mind, people that aren't worried about having, you know, people not perceiving it as me going, you need to skate this, because that's not what I'm doing. I'm suggesting. And even better than that, like, if we're closer, or if it's possible for me to get with the rider, I can actually just go, look, okay, so you see this bump on the sidewalk here? Just do the tricks as you like to do them, and I can get angles, and then we can go from there. And then after that, we can sit down and look at the footage, and then think about, like, oh, so you like that trick, but you didn't like how you did it. We can go back and get it, or we can take it to another obstacle, and we can use one of these other clips from here, and then get this other clip, and then we could build a part within a week if we're actually, like, serious. You know, a lot of people spend months, years, or whatever to, like, have a skateboard part, and that's not necessary. If you're talking big money, you know, the longer you take, probably the better, because you can actually get to the special spots, or you can find other spots. But when you're thinking about progression, say, like, if you were to put out a part a month, which is not hard to do, if you even just like get together, say, out of 30, 31 days, you get together like 2 weeks. You know, not even 2 weeks. You can get together a week and a half or even a week and get a lot of footage if you actually have the focus of what what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go. You know, having a list of spots is really, really good, and especially if these things are around your house. You can go out in a day and get like 5, 10 tricks. You know, like if you're just thinking about, like, say off a bump, you get like three really cool tricks. You know, you can even film a line, so you know you can consider that like four things. And then down the street there's like this gap, or you know, all these things that people don't really consider a lot. I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves, you know, thinking that they're trying to judge themselves based off of what they've been watching. And there you go back to, you know, the influence. But if you're the one that's going to be the focus, then you could be the influencer, you know, for the new generation, for the older generation. So, you know, the idea of purpose is I can add, you know, there's so many different ways I can add working with other people. And, you know, I think when people think about me as, you know, me and skateboarding, I don't think people see me as an asset in that aspect. And and I like to actually not be the focus, more so than not. Yeah, if I'm the focus, it's the tricks. It's not about me really talking, and so me doing this is kind of strange for me. But it's something I feel like I need to do more, because people don't. I'm judged as I judge, but I try to be softer in my judgment based off of how the interactions I've had throughout my life, because I have been the focus. So I've had to learn a lot more about myself through other people's eyes. And that's something that I could actually, you know, build with. So, and that's what brought me back to my family, is because I used to look at, you know, the things that I didn't like, you know, the things that how I felt that they looked at me, and I didn't realize that I wasn't being like how I would explain wasn't the best way to explain it, because I was thinking technically, because my mind, I'm learning more, is my mind, I go in so many different directions, so I end up in tangents and stuff like that, and people get lost with that. But if I simplify it, then I can, you know, I can figure out how to convey my point easier. And that comes to interacting with people. And I spend too much time alone, I think. And it's not to say that I need to be pushing up on other people, because I definitely don't need that, and nor does anyone else, because that's where a lot of the conflicts do come into play, because no one needs to be around anyone you know, all the time. And, you know, for us to really be able to be good with ourselves, we need time, take time alone. And I've had a lot of time alone, and people, I think, because that's all I can do, is like, it's a perception of how, through what people have said about me or to me, it's like, you think too much. Well, of course, but there's no too much. You know, we're always thinking, our brains are always working, and I think that people don't want to really accept that, and they think that things just flow, but they can, but sometimes it takes work. You know, you can't just jump into a friendship with somebody without actually like knowing a little bit about these people, and if you do, then this is why some of the friendships don't last, or they never actually become that. They're usually just acquaintances, because skateboarding, for me, most of the people I've known, I would mistake acquaintances for friends. And when I was on the 9 Club, I was talking about the friend thing, and you know, most of the people I've known have only been acquaintances. They were business associates. So, you know, I got to a point with Rodney, or I got to a point with Steve Caballero, where, you know, we spent some time together, but we didn't really, I think more so with Rodney, I, you know, would eat or, you know, do a little bit more, but we didn't really get to know each other well enough, and personalities conflict. As we're young, or as I was younger, they're the age that they were. I was more looking at them as like big brother. Doing that is unfair was unfair to them, because when you take people for granted the more that you have them, and I got to be around some people a little bit too much perhaps. So I was easier to say things that were probably very disrespectful, and at the time I wasn't judging what came out of my mouth so much, because I was more focused on skateboarding. So once I started talking, and it still happens, once I start talking, I'm just talking, and I generalize a lot, and within those generalizations, they can be taken as I'm really like assassinating a character or something to that degree. But there is a point to where everyone should actually be a little bit deeper in thought to realize that, well, if you don't really know someone, how can you really be going at them? You can be going at that surface, but the surface is not forever. People may have certain habits, but those habits aren't who they are. We change habits. Like, I smoked weed for a long time. I drank for a long time. I don't do these things anymore. So how I am now, maybe I could be even more, a little bit more, I don't know, like, who knows? I could be more or less, but at the same time, it has to do with personalities that we interact with. So you really can't gauge, watching yourself, thinking about what you're saying is very important. It's not so much what the other is saying, and how we take what's being said. You have to sit and think about that, because some people, we all at points will take certain things to heart, which isn't necessarily meant to be taken to heart, because again, who knows 100% about anybody, even those people that spend so much time with each other, because you take people for granted, so you'll think that you know them. But you don't know, you may not even care about like what their true desires are. You only care about how you interact with them. And it's very unfair. And we can't really, we all have to be self-centered. We all have to live our own lives, because if we don't live our lives, then who's going to live it for us? Even if somebody's trying to use you, they can't force you to do anything. And physically, like, there's nobody running around with, strings making somebody like dance or any of that. Everybody has to make the choice for themselves. Because we feel insecure, that doesn't excuse what we will still do. We can't blame somebody else for making us be a certain way. We have to take responsibility, and in taking responsibility, that also means that you have to realize that you're the one that is at fault when you do certain things. You can't blame someone else when you get in trouble for something. It's not somebody else's, it was, even if they were the ones that got you into a position or into a situation, you can't say that they were the full cause, because you had to act it out. So purpose is very important. If you don't have a purpose, if you don't really recognize your purpose, then then you can be manipulated to be in so many situations, or say so many things that you don't mean later, because maybe at the time you really believe you mean it. But we're influenced by the things that we were conditioned by as we've been growing up. A lot of us that got good at anything in particular, skateboarding or art, those things, many of us were running away from things that in the past that we felt that we had no power over. So we feel that if we can be good at this thing, or we focus on this, then none of that matters. But you still have to recognize that if you're carrying baggage, at some point you're going to have to put it down. So putting it down means that you have to recognize that you have it. And a lot of people don't think about that. I say a lot, but I'll say just to people, when people tell me that I think too much, I think that those people are the type of people that don't want to consider those certain thoughts that they don't like. And, being that, like, some of the things that I may talk about is some of the things that they're trying to avoid. So saying that I think too much is a way to try to maybe shut me down from speaking on something that might make them think about it. Perhaps. Everyone's different. I can't really say. But I can say this is that, like, what can be done when I'm interacting with somebody directly is that, well, if you don't like it, just say something. Say, I'm not interested in that. Or, this conversation isn't good. And I have friends that have said that or do say that, and I'll still go on. But, it's, my ideas aren't really, a lot of times when I'm talking about certain things, I feel that it's pertinent to the situation, and maybe I do go too deep with it. But at the same time, I feel if I need to say it, I should say it while I'm thinking about it. And a lot of times, most times, there's only a few people that I really have consistent talks with. And consistent meaning, like, whenever we sit down, we actually go and talk about things that really concern us. So, like, Jordan Maurer, or Brian McNaughton, when I would spend time with him, we could talk about things that we were concerned with at the time, and, taking it to heart. We're not, if we're able to speak, then that's getting rid of some of that baggage. And I think that if people are receptive to it, it makes it so much better. Like, a funny thing is, like, I was talking to a banker. I was talking to this lady that was, it was about getting my credit card sent to me. And I ended up talking to her, being more personal. We got in a conversation about health, and it started with, she was in Kansas City, or she was in Missouri, and I was like, not Missouri, but she was in Kansas, and I was like, I just moved from there. And then it went from, from there to, why I'm back, I'm back in California with my family. And then, but it wasn't, it was like, it was a superficial conversation, but it wasn't, because the things that she told me about a little bit about her family, like how she's working and her husband retired, but then he became disabled, and now she works a lot. And then she was talking about her children and stuff, and when she was talking about her husband being disabled, I started thinking about my great grandmother. I was thinking, like, wow, right before years before she passed, she ended up on so many medications, and I remember learning that, like, many of those, probably half of the medication she was taking was to counteract other stuff that she was taking, like destroying her liver or doing other, like giving her anxiety. So she had to take this other pill to, take away the anxiety or the nausea or all these things. But there's natural remedies for these things. But we've gotten so used to taking pills or you listening to doctors and these people, and not to say that they're wrong, but the abundance of what we were taking. So I was triggered. So I went in on that, and I was just, because we were waiting, we had to wait for her officer to, verify information and all this. So, went in on that, and it just triggered me. I learned a lot about all kinds of things. So I was just going like, when it comes down to, say, metals, say cilantro is supposed to be good for pulling some of the metals like barium or the things that they're saying they're spraying in the air, chemtrails, not contrails. But, some of the things that we're taking in through the water and all this stuff, fluoride, and these are facts. It's not theory. These are facts. But there's natural remedies that we don't associate with anymore. And I think she was like, she's like 50s, in her 50s, around 60 or something like that. So she knew about all the natural remedies And then realizing how things have changed, we had a conversation that went on for a while about that. And it was really good because not only was she listening, but she was also giving, saying stuff back to me. And that's usually what I'm looking for when I do interact with other people. I'll talk about things that I feel are pertinent, So it's like, well, you say something, and my intent is, my intent is not to try to force her to do anything. I want to help. So I was like, whoa, like when my great-grandmother was taking all these pills, I learned later on where if I had learned these things before, I would have tried to, help her with that. I tried to talk to my mother, try to talk to my family about things, our health and, exercise. Very important. Skateboarding is super good for that. And then a lot of the people that skateboard are like worried about their health beyond, to be able to continue to skateboard, they eat well, drink a lot of water, but not just drinking water, because tap water is like filled with a lot of chemicals. They found that because they don't filter out some of the drugs that are that go through the systems. Because if people really realize that the drinking water that coming through the faucet, how it was actually recycled, then maybe you would consider, and also not just recycled, but also used to grow the foods. Then maybe you'd consider that growing your own food, or figuring out how to filter the water yourself, and there's all these different things that we could do that would make us better, not just it would be better for everyone in the long run, because a lot of times some of our mental states are based on some of these influences. So I may go, when I smoked a lot of weed, I'd get really caught in tangents, and those are, these tangents are obviously naturally occurring, but I think obviously enhanced, because you'd focus in on specific things, and mainly my intent is I'm always trying to be helpful if I can, and I think that could be construed as pushy, but it's neither here nor there. It's my personality, so I don't find myself to be that way, but I could easily be that way to somebody that's not used to interacting with people like me. And, when we get into conversations, some of these conversations can seem like arguments, because if I don't agree, I'll add something, but sometimes people aren't really trying to hear. They'll make their statement and they're not trying to hear a rebuttal with something added to it. So they're not used to somebody trying to present like some information. And this information, I say information because I can't say that everything I'm saying is fully the truth. I'm just, you can do your research and find out. Because when we're talking about like health and all these things, everybody's has a different way about them. Our systems are different, so we can't just generally, like, we can all go to the doctor, but we can't all take penicillin, for instance. Some of us have really bad allergic reactions. A lot of things we actually do consume, we all have allergic reaction, but some worse than others. Say like milk, dairy. We all get mucus from dairy, and that's a reaction, but it's not perceived this way. But a lot of people never even consider these things. So if I love cheese, and other people love whatever they're taking, so if you say something that goes against that, then they may think that you're trying to tell them to stop. And I'm not trying to tell you what to do. If you're my friend or we're having a friendly conversation, I'm generally trying to add something, maybe something to consider. So perception. But anyways, my purpose, as I've been learning, my purpose is, at least how I want to define it currently, is to add. I can make things better if I'm able. If there's something that I say with skateboarding, there's a lot of things I know about skateboarding, or I can help with other people that, you know, may be having trouble with certain things, and I've done this in the past, and vice versa. You know, like the interaction, it's like somebody in me and me interacting with someone else, I can be given some great advice, which, you know, that's what I look forward to. But, you know, it's personalities. Some people really are turned off by personalities they're not used to. I'm not the type that would normally just walk up to you and just try to hang out with you. But if we do connect, then that conversation, the first conversation, can get really in depth. And that could be a bit much for most people, as I've found. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to actually, you know, spend a little bit more time, you know, working with other people, like, you know, not necessarily trying to mentor or any of these things, but it's I love to edit, and I love to, you know, get footage. So maybe working on a skateboard project to get, you know, who knows, I could pretty much do everything on a certain end, you know, like the filming, editing, you know, and it doesn't mean that I have to do all that, but I'm not super great at selling. You know, I've never really felt like really good at being pushy about getting somebody to buy things. You know, I present things, and that's, I don't find that a fault, because it's the more that I learn about my family and how we go back and my ancestors, the more that I realize that I've always kind of been about the natural way. So as the ancient Americans were prior to Columbus, and when Columbus came, they lived amongst like everything. So having you know, like monetary or having possessions wasn't a big deal, and so it's not really a big deal to me. If I have something, I generally only want the tools that I can use to build, and that's been pretty much my perspective, what I need, you know. But I do have to focus on wants, and so my wants, my desires, I desire to interact with others. And interacting with others means that, you know, to some degree I have to tone down at times. You know, I have to work on my interaction. You know, I can't change my personality. However, I can hold back certain things, you know, when I realize that some people aren't really about certain things. But I'm not very good around people that aren't interested in being productive. You know, if you just want to hang out, yeah, if you just want to hang out, it's like, that's cool, but, you know, a lot of times the people that just want to hang out don't want to be told anything. So that causes a paradox for me. You know, if I can't convey information to you and you just want to hang out, then I don't really see a lot of building in that, you know. And a lot of times, well, there's the give and take. So interacting with people, if you're gonna want to hang out, you just want to kick it, then, well, with me, I don't just like hang out and smoke anymore or drink anymore. So that all cause conflict. So that's why I stay away from certain people. You know, not to say that we couldn't interact, but it should be on, you know, as I'm older, it should be on more of a productive, you know, vibe. Otherwise, you know, there's other people for that. You know, I was with relationships. There's so many people, so many different types of personalities. There's a lot more personalities that are clingy, but a lot of times with those people that want to cling into groups, you will find that there's a lot of disputes that go on. But a lot of times people will just hold their tongue when they're around each other, and then talk about each other when they're gone. Or as soon as somebody walks away, they're like, you see that or hear that. It's like, and I've been in groups like that, and I usually try to get away from those groups, because it's, well, then what did they say about me? Because I'm sure they say some stuff about me, because I hear enough about myself. Very seldom straightforward. It's easier now because of the internet. People, they're great with saying whatever they want to say. But even still, some of these people don't like it when I'm trying to get to the real meaning of what they're saying, because a lot of people want to say negative things, but they don't really want to address the reason why they feel that way. And that's more important to me. It's like, well, you say something negative about me, it's like you're thinking about me, so then what is this context? Where does that come from? What is it that made you think this way? And why is it that you want to convey it, but then you don't want to hear anything back about it? Just leave it alone. Otherwise, it's pointless. You're causing conflicts unnecessarily. That means that there's the conflict within. Because when I learned that I didn't like, when I started realizing, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that, I was just like, why is it, why do I even have to even talk about it? It's because I'm, like taking it in. And there's certain things you can't help but take it in because of interactions with other people. Say, like, if I'm in somebody's car and they're playing music I don't like, I have to suck it up, because I'm at their mercy. It's their vehicle or their their environment. And if I'm gonna be in their environment, then I should actually just enjoy myself, or just be able to tune out, that sort of thing, which that's a work in progress, because I have such an opinion. Like everyone has their opinion, even if a lot of people's opinions are based on the general crowd. Mine, because I spent so little time around the crowd, mine is really like what I think. Not to say that the other people don't think this, because these are obviously what you say is a thought that's rolling around in your head. But I avoid the unnecessarily negative things. So like a lot of rap music, I listen to the lyrics. I've been prone to that ever since I was young. I listen to everything, and if I can't understand it, then I'm less likely to even want to listen to it, because it's I don't know what I'm taking in, because say other languages, I'm learning more, and I'm realizing that a lot of things are harmless, but there's many of the words, if you take into etymology, a lot of the words, they come through other languages into the language we're speaking, which we think is one language, but it's a dialect of many others. So they influence our thoughts, regardless if we feel it or not. So it's how certain things are being said. If you say what rap music, a lot of rap music is really intense, in the sense of like people are trying to convey their feelings, and these feelings are the angst a lot of times. I don't like, they're pretty much saying I don't like this, I don't like that, or what I like is this and that, and this is better than that. The comparison. So even making the comparisons, like, no, I don't think that anybody's better than anybody else. We just have our different ways. Some people might be better at a skill, but that doesn't mean that if, there's very seldom that you come across people with the same exact skill set and they're on the same exact level. So pitting other people or ways about them against each other, it really doesn't make a lot of sense the more that you think about it. And again, I go back to, some of the people that say that I think too much. Maybe you should think a little bit more. I could tone it down as far as my conveyance of it, but, we're always thinking, and if you're trying to impair those thoughts, then you might find yourself in a lot more trouble than you necessarily need to be in. Not to say that we need to be in any trouble, obviously, but you'll find yourself in a lot of situations that you really should have avoided. And I know a lot of people that would probably be like, well, had I thought about this a little bit deeper, I can go back into a lot of different situations where if I thought a little bit more about it, I would have just avoided it. So it wouldn't have had to happen, or I wouldn't have said certain things. We wouldn't have gone as far as it did. But live and learn. So purpose, purpose is very important, and I think I'm learning more my purpose, and more my purpose is I'm a communicator. And that means that I need to learn with certain people when to shut off my thought, or not shut my thoughts off, but when to not convey them. As some people, maybe being around me, maybe they'll be able to learn to like associate with their thoughts a little bit better. Maybe like consider their thoughts and not really be insecure about the way that they think, because they'll be able to. I love to communicate. I love to talk. So if you want to, have a one-on-one, I have no problem with that. Being that I'm older, and I can't say that I'm any wiser than anybody else, but there's certain things that I have really thought about, spent a lot of time thinking about, and it wasn't just as a result of me just having to. Those things that I've thought about that really didn't have any pertinence at the time, that I got into it about my life. But now, realizing the story of humanity is very important to me. So, origins of people. I talk a lot about this, and some people may get upset. I'm learning about words. I say Caucasian instead of white because there is no black or white people. Because the more that you study, the more you realize that everyone came from somewhere, and everyone is of a people, and these terms are generalizations, and they don't really truly have an origin other than a caste system. And I don't think anybody's above or below. It's mentality mostly, and that's just me. And I'm not trying to tell anybody to use different terminology, but the influence could be there. I don't try to use certain words because I don't feel that they're necessary. There's a lot of words that people, throughout my life, I not even have to avoid. They just weren't a part of my vocabulary. And I grew up around people that spoke these words all the time. I don't really say black and white too much, and when I did, I always kind of felt odd about it. It's just like, yeah, there's, white really, when you look up the definition of it, when they're trying to describe people, which it really doesn't, because it's a tint. Both black and white are tints. They're not colors or hues. But the North Africans, the like Moroccans or Arabs, and some of these people they're considered white too. And when if you're thinking in that mindset of skin, you can have some dark people that are considered white, and a lot of times people don't even consider this. And so the reality of things, it occurs more. I have to receive or think about these more, and I think as people get older, they should think about these things more, because when you're addressing people of a different mindset, skateboarding is easy. You can just sling out all you want. But if you're talking, interacting with people of a different intellect, work or even building something, like going to, working on your own projects. When you're working with other people that actually are really like interested in what they do, sometimes your communication could actually make them not want to interact with you. And I found this out, but for me, I felt that it was for the better, because I can't be around people that are always just, going on gutter, or like trying to be above, saying, I don't try to use big words, I just use the words that I think. But sometimes people are trying to like be above other people's head just for the sake of doing that. And, so that's like belittling. And I don't try to do that, but some people can perceive me as that. But it's just my way, and I'm not usual with most people. So my purpose is to actually, be a communicator. So I have to get better at this. And this is what I'm working on. So until next time, have a good day.